tell me a little bit about how COVID-19 has affected OtterBox. When did you first start seeing the impact? And I kind of remember a conversation we had even in February, where you were starting to see maybe disruption in the supply chain a bit. And let me know, how has the impact of COVID-19 changed over the last several weeks since you first saw it emerge?
Yeah, and so, as a global business with a lot of operations in China, this began to impact us in the early parts of January. We were planning for Chinese New Year, which is a typical kind of shutdown period in China, and it became apparent that with the escalations in the virus, that most of our factories and our employees weren't going to be able to return from Chinese New Year on schedule, and so we had to increase production ahead of Chinese New Year in order to accommodate for some of that. And then
Mm,
when that came to an end, it was pretty challenging from a supply chain standpoint, just not having the factories up and running. And luckily, we had been able to plan ahead for some of that, seeing that that was likely going to be a result. But we've been dealing with this in our offices globally for quite a while. Our Hong Kong office and our Shenzhen office closed in January, and were closed for a period of time. We were able to open our Hong Kong office back up, and then all of a sudden they had another spike there, and so we had to close back down again, which is kind of one of those concerns. If we're too hasty to
mhm.
make adjustments to get back to normal, we may end up prolonging this thing longer than it needs to be. Here in the US, it was about the beginning of March where we started to see, okay, this is probably going to be a challenge here as well. We need to start really planning in the US for what this is going to look like, and ended up closing our offices down about a week and a half before the government stay at home order went into place.
Okay.
That applies to all of our office workers. The only group of individuals that didn't apply to was those working in um, our distribution centers, which we've got two of those here in Colorado, and they were allowed to stay open because we provide so much product to first responders, hospitals, police forces, and education throughout the country. And we've seen the amount of orders from those organizations spike pretty considerably during this time.
That's fantastic that you're able to serve our first responders and all the folks on the front line. Thank you for
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah,
Because you had that inside, that's really because you almost had an inside look in what was happening in China before really we had that, um, we started experiencing the impact of COVID-19 here in the US. Did that allow you to, as a company, to better prepare maybe than others?
well, there's some things that we could prepare for. We could prepare by having the right product staged in the right places, but what we couldn't really prepare for was the impact of retail closures throughout the country. um, that's not something that you can put in place a magic strategy that's going to make it so that people can still buy. We've moved a lot of our traffic online,
Right.
but some of our primary online channels like Amazon have been prioritizing necessities, food and cleaning supplies, and very much rightfully so. But there's a lot about this that, frankly, as much planning as you could do, it wouldn't have changed the result.
Please share with me how you are leading your company, OtterBox, through this pandemic. What pivots has your business made to adjust to this situation? And I know your company values, Jim, are really important. How have your company values been guiding your decisions through this crisis?
Yeah, well, so I think the first and the biggest change is we've had to rethink communication across the board. In the absence of good communication, people make up stories, and they make up stories that they believe because they're the ones that made them up.
Mm,
And so instead of having a quarterly company meeting where we share a lot of information, we're having to pivot. And what we know is that people don't digest email with the same degree of rigor that they do other forms of media. We live in a society where people are used to video content in short bursts, And so myself and my leadership team, we've adapted to that, and I've started putting out videos at least twice a week for our entire company, giving status updates on where we are, decisions that we're making, explanation behind those things, and have found that that makes a real difference rather than relying on a chain of people on video calls to cascade information, trying to take the message directly to our employees. Not only the frequency of communication, but also the transparency.
Hmm.
Uh, we're sharing a lot more information than we ever have before because people have an interest more now than they ever have before in some of the inner workings and how things are going. It's not typical for our sales team to want to know how things are going in our distribution centers, but right now, that's a hot topic of conversation. And so sharing that information is important. I would say the other thing is leading specific teams. Instead of having just a once a week staff meeting, I moved to having that staff meeting, but then a short half an hour check in with my team every day because that face to face interaction is really important.
Hmm.
I've asked that all of our teams throughout the business do that and that each manager have a face to face check in with each of their direct reports at least once every 48 hours. And what we find is that for a lot of those people, that's the only face to face conversation they have during that day. That's a challenging thing, and we don't realize how much we depend on simple things like people being in a good spot emotionally in order to do their jobs. If we don't be proactive in helping to maintain some of those things and maintain those relationships, what we're going to find is the best strategy in the world simply doesn't come to fruition because we haven't paid attention to some of those things that matter.
Hmm. That's excellent. And I'm sure, we, as you mentioned about employees' mental health, this could be the only conversation someone might have during the day. We forget how important other people are and how, if we are in the office situation, how many times during a day you get up or how easy it is to just go across the hallway and talk to someone and with all that gone.
Yep.
To be productive, we all need to stay healthy. And I know you all have really prioritized that at Otterbox. What would you say is the most challenging thing that you've had to navigate during the global pandemic?
As a global company, we're subject to government restrictions and orders across the globe and trying to manage the variation in those restrictions and what can we do in one state versus another state versus one country versus another. And sometimes, so even here in Colorado, some of the executive orders have directly contradicted the orders from the public health organizations here in Colorado, and trying to navigate that has been challenging.
Mhm.
Um, we do that because we want to stay in compliance with the law. And what we've had to do is just take a step back and say, okay, we're going to be even more conservative than the most conservative law because we need to make sure that we're taking care of our people, that we're keeping them safe, and balancing that equation of what is an acceptable level of risk to be taken. And we've had to be really conservative in that equation because, frankly, there's no amount of money, there's no amount of product that's worth human life.
What would you say has been your biggest learning from going through this pandemic?
I think that one of the things that's really been reaffirming to me, and maybe it shouldn't have been a learning, but it felt like something that I'm relearning, is just the goodness of human nature. We've done a lot of things to try and help out the community, and I can't tell you how many people are volunteering with ideas on how we can help first responders. Whether it's our 3D printing lab printing face masks and face shields, or our charitable foundation looking for ways that we can help other nonprofits who are really struggling during this time.
Hmm.
Our one of the companies that we own is a distillery, Old Elk Distilleries, and the employees there decided that it would be best to shut down production and convert to hand sanitizer. And that's what we've been doing for nearly the past 6 weeks, is running a full-time hand sanitizer factory. And these are all employee-led initiatives in terms of people saying, we want to help out, we want to do the right thing, and we want to give back. And I'm so excited about that because giving back is one of our core values. You and I have talked about before that our mission statement is we grow to give.
Hmm.
And we've had a lot of time that we focus on growth, and we're certainly hoping to continue that growth when we come out of this. But perhaps right now is the time to really focus on giving. And that's been a wonderful example that our employees have set for us.
That is a wonderful example, and I think it's, one of the things that we can do in this challenging time to make ourselves feel better is when you give to someone else. And thank you on behalf of the community for all of those efforts. It's truly very wonderful and inspiring. We don't know how much longer COVID will be around, but we know it will be around into the foreseeable future. Do you see any permanent changes at OtterBox that might result due to this global pandemic?
Um, yeah, so we've kind of put things into three categories. There's short-term changes, which are things that we have to deal with right now. Kind of the medium-term changes that are going to be around for a while. So, for instance, people are going to need to work from home from a childcare perspective for the next several months. People that normally wouldn't have had that need. I think on a longer term basis, there's going to be a change in consumer behavior. A lot of people that have not necessarily participated in the digital economy, that they have been used to going to stores, now have a taste for what it's like to just order, and whether that's groceries or electronics or anything else. I think we're going to see more of our economy shift to online and delivery. And I think that creates opportunities, and that will certainly influence our spending and our investment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's going to be some level of employees that say, you know what, I've been much more productive working from home, and I'd like to continue doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already heard stories of some employees that had wanted to work from home that say, I am just not cut out for this. I need to be back in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, in order for their own mental and emotional health, they need to be in that office environment. And so I imagine that there will be a change in our office strategy in terms of who needs to work in the office. We've also taken a chance to kind of relook at some of the major processes we have throughout our business, and to work through, are there things that we thought were really important before that it turns out we didn't need to be doing, and can we prioritize that effort into things that may be a little bit more efficient and meaningful?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is definitely a hinge point in our business, as I'm sure it will be for all businesses. Those businesses that don't learn from this and don't adapt because of this, are probably going to be in a position where they end up repeating some of those lessons again.
Mm-hmm. You're learning a lot, and that's really exciting. Is there any advice, Jim, that you would like to share with our students, our community, business leaders regarding how to navigate this COVID-19, this global pandemic?
The need for optimism is as great as it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's also a real learning experience for all of us. The truth is, in 20 years, nobody is going to remember what their business's revenue was this month. What they are going to remember are the acts of kindness that they performed one for another, the kind words that somebody said, the phone call to make sure that somebody was in a good position. The simple acts of service that we can do for each other are the things that are really going to matter in the long term. And the employers that take care of their employees during times like this are
Mm-hmm.
going to be the ones to come out in a much stronger position on the back end. And it's one thing to take care of your people economically, it's much more important to take care of them kind of emotionally and let them know that you care. There's a lot of hiring that's going to be done after this is all over. And people that are looking at which job they take are going to be looking at how companies responded during this challenge. And companies are creating their employer brand right now, even if they're not intending to.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my advice would be stay focused on people. That's what really matters.
That's wonderful advice that we can all learn from. Thank you, Jim. This was just a fantastic interview. I've personally, I'm so inspired by you. I'm inspired by OtterBox, your values, your mission, and I can see how it's just carried you through this really difficult time. And I know there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I know OtterBox, you've recently released a new line of cases from built from recyclable material. Do you want to say a couple words about that? I was reading about that.
Yeah, so that's under our Life Proof brand of phone cases, but it's a new line of phone cases made entirely out of recycled ocean plastic in the form of recycled fishing nets, which account for about 46% of the plastic in the ocean and the most dangerous plastic in the ocean. And so, trying to do our part to make the world a better place. We're harvesting those fishing nets and then turning those into phone cases that then at the end of their life are also recyclable. And for every unit that's purchased, we're also giving $1 to a water conservation charity of the consumer's choice. So, it's just another way of us trying to live our mission of both growing and giving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think giving back, not just to people, but also to our planet, is an important thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And it's also, in this challenging time, you continue to innovate, continue to move forward, and as you said, continue to try to make this world a better place. And you're definitely doing that. So thank you so much. I appreciate again your time, and I hope your family continues to stay healthy, and all your employees do too. And I know you're taking care of each other. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. It's great to talk to you again.